To the administration who says there's no effect on veteran care, I say you are absolutely wrong, and come here and I will show you.
Veterans are fighting back as the Trump administration continues its all-out assault on the federal workforce. It turns out that's what happens when you let a deadbeat drug addict take a chainsaw to the government. Now, I'm not sure why Trump decided the first person that he should attack when he becomes president are veterans, seeing as service members aren't exactly known to like being treaded on. And they're not going to start laying down for Dumpy Don just because the Republicans think he's a god king. I'll show you how they're fighting back with a massive class action lawsuit, as well as a clip of the new VA secretary getting absolutely lambasted for firing tons of people within the VA. But first, if you're enjoying the video, make sure to like the video and double check that you're subscribed. Veterans are being attacked on two fronts. Not only does the government as a whole have nearly 30% of its employees being veterans, meaning loads of veterans are being fired at the hands of Elon Musk and Doge, but veterans make up nearly 25% of the VA itself. This veteran, Nathan Hoover, is a Trump voter who's now unemployed and says he feels betrayed by the president's dramatic downsizing of the federal government. He says, "I think a lot of veterans have voted the same way, and we have been betrayed. I feel like my life and the life of so many like me, so many that have sacrificed so much for this country, are being destroyed." And it's not just that one veteran. Here's another. There's Evans, a recreational therapist at Salem VA. He was a 36-year Army veteran. He said, "I cried. I haven't done that in a while because you're just kind of free-falling now." Cynthia Williams, who also voted for Trump. It was blindsiding because he said he wanted to make the country great again. This is not making it great again. Man, I sure wish somebody was around to tell Cynthia that Trump loves lying more than Herbie Hancock.
That's why I love Herbie Hancock. He loves to lie.
For a party that spent the last 20 years exploiting veterans like it's a broken slot machine at a casino, the Republicans sure are throwing as many veterans under the bus as they can get their hands on. Here's Alina Habba, Trump's counselor and former lawyer, telling veterans that they don't need to have a job, at least not one that us taxpayers have to pay for, as if it wasn't the taxpayers who benefited from the veterans serving.
Starting to think about maybe some of those veterans who worked for the federal government and maybe what the administration can do to at least help salvage their lives?
Well, as you know, we care about veterans tremendously. I mean, that's something the president has always cared about. Anybody in blue, anybody that serves this country. But at the same time, we have taxpayer dollars. We have a fiscal responsibility to use taxpayer dollars to pay people that actually work. That doesn't mean that we forget our veterans by any means. We are going to care for them in the right way, but perhaps they're not fit to have a job at this moment or not willing to come to work. And we can't, I wouldn't take money from you and pay somebody and say, sorry, they're not going to come to work. It's just not acceptable.
Alina seems to be under the impression that all of these veterans got fired because they didn't want to come to work, as if this has anything to do with work from home. I haven't heard the remote work excuse since somewhere around Elon's 13th kid, and that's because it's not only a dumb argument, it's demonstrably false. Trump is planning to cut 80,000 employees from Veterans Affairs, according to this internal memo. The memo instructs top-level staff to prepare an agency-wide reorganization in August to resize and tailor the workforce to the mission and revised structure. They're trying to sell us on the idea that cutting more than 80,000 workers from Veterans Affairs is going to make things more efficient. This administration is finally going to give the veterans what they want. President Trump has a mandate for generational change, and that's exactly what we're going to deliver at the VA. I don't think any veterans voted to lose their jobs and have worse service at the VA, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Michael Missel was the Inspector General for the VA for 9 years. He was fired by Trump during his own version of a midnight massacre, where Trump was putting down Inspector Generals like they were a bunch of Tootsie Rolls. Missel says that what's going to happen is the VA is not going to perform well for veterans, and veterans are going to get harmed. But Doug Collins here says that the VA is magically going to work better with less employees. Even though it's the size of some of the biggest corporations in America, reducing the amount of physicians, therapists, and service providers is somehow going to make things better for the VA.
Well, given the VA wait times scandal during the Obama administration, the ongoing concerns about access to care for veterans, what specific safeguards are in place to ensure that veterans don't face longer delays or reduced services?
Well, I think what safeguards is employees doing their jobs, and which is what they're trying, we're working to make sure they have all the tools to do that. We're also putting in place, making sure that they have the critical assets to the employment schedules. We're making a look at all of how we actually deal with our hiring. Remember, one of the things we've talked about here, and it's not been talked about enough, is we're protecting and have protected over 300,000 positions at the VA that we had as mission critical, front facing to our veterans, not only in healthcare but in benefits as well. We're doing this to make sure that we're actually getting the results we needed. I think too long we found in Washington, and I've said this before and I said it on the video earlier, that we have this idea that money and people will solve issues. And really the reality is if you don't have good processes in place, you're not going to solve the problem. This has been going on the Hill, and we've known this on Capitol Hill for years. Senator Johnny Isakson from Georgia, who used to be the chair of the Senate VA committee, actually said this almost 10 years ago. He said the problem with the VA is not that it needs more money, and this was almost $200 billion ago. It needed a better structure, and that's what we're trying to provide.
Hold on now, because what structural differences are we talking about? Firing a bunch of employees isn't going to fundamentally change the way that the VA provides service. The inefficiencies with the way that veterans apply for benefits, for example, and the stunning wait times when it comes to seeing a physician aren't going to get better from firing employees. So it's a bit concerning when Doug here couldn't even give a single example to what kind of structural differences we're talking about. It's more like the inefficiencies of the VA are part of the strategy all along, a decades-long plan to create negative sentiment around the VA as an excuse to get rid of the program altogether. So the illusion that this guy is going to somehow provide better service for the VA is laughable. It's pretty obvious to everybody that the reason why this guy is the head of the agency is because he's willing to finally take it behind the shed and put it down like Kristi Noem's dog. But the veterans who work at the VA are not going to let these lies slide.
About veteran care, we spoke with a veteran who's currently receiving inpatient treatment at the Bath VA Medical Center in New York. And this person says the cuts that the VA have instituted already are affecting the quality of care.
We've also had a lot of scheduled groups that are being canceled simply because we don't have the staff to facilitate them. And so that leaves us veterans to our own devices. And a lot of people just isolate in their rooms. And for people who suffer from substance use disorder or mental health issues, isolation is one of the worst things you can do, especially in recovery from substance use. To the administration who says there's no effect on veteran care, I say you are absolutely wrong, and come here and I will show you.
What's your response?
Well, my response is this is just a piece of journalism. It's not doing its job in the sense of you're picking a veteran who is saying that they're not getting care in a facility and in a health setting in which those jobs and others have been exempt. And so care that has been taken care would not have been affected. And also, by the way, this has just happened within the last week. To say that there's this all of a sudden this dearth in care because of cuts that are happening here is simply not right.
Yes, the classic, no, that's not happening because I said so. Ignore the people who are on the ground who actually live this reality. Whatever I say from the bully pulpit is the truth. George Orwell, come on up to accept the most vindicated man of all time award. But it's not all doom and gloom because the veterans are getting together and fighting back. Attorneys file class action lawsuit appeals to federal board for thousands of workers that Trump fired. We can only hope that this class action lawsuit takes so much of Trump's money he can no longer afford whatever that crap is he keeps smearing all over his face. I'm Tony Hinderman with Really American, and I'll catch you next time.